Hi, my name is Paul Nguyen. Today is July 27th, 2011. I'll be interviewing Nina Liu as part of the 500 Oral Histories Project by the Vietnamese American Heritage Foundation here in Denver, Colorado at the Our Lady of Lourdes Church. Thank you for coming in today. Can you tell us your name, when you were born, and where?
Of course, my name is Nina Liu. I was born March 7th, 1987 in the capital of the province Hunan, China, called Changsha.
And how old were you when you moved to America?
I was 7 years old because it was in 1994.
Do you remember anything from your childhood in China?
Yes, I do, as a matter of fact. When I lived in Changsha, I remember we lived in this very tall apartment complex because most of the people in China don't really have the kind of money to afford a house by themselves, and because of the population problem, most people do live in those very small but tall apartment complexes. I still remember in the courtyard of the apartment complex, there was a very tall statue, probably about 2 stories high, of the moon goddess on a moon, and there's a little rabbit with her, and that's actually part of one of our cultural myths or folktales, you could say, which is about the moon goddess who fell in love with a mortal on Earth. And when she went back to the moon, she missed him, and so her rabbit basically makes moon cakes for the humans of Earth, and we celebrate that every spring on the Lunar New Year festival. In the house itself, I was a toddler, so I slept with my mom in the same room. I can still picture it in my head. It's really kind of strange. So I had a living room here, and then my mom and my bedroom would be here, and there was another bedroom over here, which was actually really creepy. And I tried to never go in there. I'll tell you about that later. And there was like a small kitchen off to the side. And I remember in the living room, my parents bought me like this little karaoke machine, so I'd stand in front of the TV and sing. It was really fun. In that one creepy room, the reason why I say it's kind of creepy is because one time my grandparents came over and we had like this big family reunion at the house, and I still remember it was dark and I went into that room for some reason to get something, and I kept seeing like a shadow pop up behind the bed. And to this day, I still think about it. And I think it's part of the reason why I'm so scared of the dark to this day now, and maybe why I'm even scared of bugs. And then I would run out into the living room and tell the people in the living room, hey, there's something weird in that room. And of course they didn't believe me because I was a child. So they were like, oh, you're just imagining stuff, don't worry about it. And then I would go back into the room, I'd stand there, and then the shadow would grow larger, almost in like a menacing way. And I thought about turning on the lights, but I kind of wanted to see what it was, but I was also scared at the same time. But eventually I turned on the lights and then it went away. And then I turned the lights off, and well, I waited with the lights on, but then the shadow kind of started coming back. So I ran out of the room again, and I told everybody, but again, no one believed me. And so to this day, it's like an unsolved mystery. I kind of want to go back just to see if it's still there, but I don't know. Maybe it was my imagination, but I kind of don't think so.
Do you believe in ghosts?
I do, actually. I would prefer to not because I'm kind of a scaredy cat, and I don't like the idea of ghosts, but I do think that they exist because I think there's just too much scientific evidence to prove that there is.
What about your parents and grandparents? Were they pretty superstitious and believe in that kind of stuff too?
I actually don't know. I don't think my parents are superstitious. My grandparents, maybe. It's not really something I've ever really talked to my family about because it's just not really a traditional subject. They probably would have thought that I was weird or something. I guess my family and I are we talk about our normal day-to-day lives, career goals. We don't really go into the subconscious areas.
Speaking of career goals, do you remember what school was like in China?
Yes, I do. After I lived in Changsha, my parents were always traveling a lot because my dad was doing international business at the time, and my mom switched careers a couple of times from being a school teacher to doing international business to back being the school teacher. But either way, I didn't see very much of my parents growing up. So when I was, I think, around 2 or 3, I moved in with my grandparents on my mom's side, and they were pretty much my guardians the entire time I was growing up, all the way until I moved to the US. And so those are the 2 people that I feel a really strong sense of gratitude towards because they're pretty much my parents as far as when I was growing up. My grandmother was the person that I was closest to the most. I still remember she would play Chinese checkers and chess with me, and it was really fun. My grandpa didn't really know how to take care of me because he was kind of old. He didn't really know how to cook, but he tried. I still remember every single day for every single meal practically, he would make me noodles with eggs, and that was pretty much it, with some salt. And so I eventually got really tired of that. So when I first moved to Hong Kong before I came to America, I remember my father trying to take me to a really nice noodle place, and me kept saying no, 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 like anything but noodles, because I was so scarred by it. And I still remember he ordered a really good noodle dish. I ordered just plain rice because everything else was noodles. And then he forced me to try some of his dish. I tried it, it was amazing, and so from then on I was no longer scarred by noodles.
What were some of your favorite dishes growing up in China?
Geez, I really don't remember. A lot of it's just traditional food. It's not the kind of food that you would see in a restaurant in the US. So
how's it different?
I think a lot of it's more vegetable based, not much of it's meat. If it's meat, it's very lean based. And I remember eating a lot of porridge when I was younger, and it was pretty good.
What kind of porridge? Like rice?
It was just rice, I believe, just white rice with some sort of a radish, pickled radish. In my childhood, in Zhuzhou also, we lived in a really tall apartment complex, and occasionally my cousin, my female cousin and my older male cousin, they would come and visit, and sometimes they would stay. So in China, we have like this one child policy to where in my generation, you can't have more than one child. I don't really know what happens if you do, but I would always call my older girl cousin my sister, and I would always call my older male cousin my brother, because they were pretty much like sisters and brothers to me. I got along really well with the brother, not so well with the sister because she had a really strong personality, and I was kind of a shy, timid person growing up, and so she would like pick on me, and then my brother would like defend me. And we all went to school together in the same elementary school. There was a big courtyard too, and I still remember riding a little tricycle around the courtyard. And there's also the same place where we would do like our morning exercises. I went up to the end of my first grade in China, and then my brother and sister went up to, I think my sister's second grade and my brother's sixth grade before I left them.
Was morning exercises part of the school's curriculum, or was that something you and your family just did?
Yes, it was part of the school curriculum. Every single child that went to school, I think in all of China, were required to do morning exercise. It was really early, I believe, like probably 8 in the morning. But it's okay because most people, they lived literally a 5-minute walk away from the school. So did I, and so it wasn't bad at all, and it was actually kind of fun. It was almost like the way people do yoga in the morning sometimes. School is a lot more strict there. I believe we wore school uniforms every single day, and for class, most people were really obedient, so it wasn't like in the US where people could just get out of hand, and if you were late, they would shut the door on you and you would be forced to stand outside for all of the class period to just, embarrass you. So that was like always one of my terrors, being late to class. And so actually in China, I was never late to anything. It's changed quite a bit now that I've come to the US. Schooling is also a lot more rigorous in China. In elementary school, you learn how to do like multiplication, how to read, how to write poems and things like that by the end of first grade, which I think most people started learning probably by 4th grade in the US, which was a bit strange to me. What I heard was that elementary school is alright, middle school gets a little bit harder, and high school is actually the hardest in China. And the hardest thing about education in China is an entrance exam that you have to take in order to be accepted into universities. And that's a standardized thing, so you can think of it kind of like as the SATs or ACTs here, but over there it's a lot more rigorous, a lot more intense. And based on your score, you get to have a better selection of the schools you can go into. And because you're competing against everyone else in the entire nation, all 1 billion of them, you have to try really, really hard. And I've seen so many like horror kind of movies about children from high school trying to get into college with those entrance exams and just studying their butt off, not eating, not sleeping for, I believe, months on end, and their parents like whipping them because they want them to get into good education. It's really intense, but once you get accepted into a university, you're pretty much set for life. University is not nearly as hard as it is in the US. In China, basically once you get into university, you're basically set. In order to fail out of university, you actually have to try pretty hard, which is really different from here. So one of the reasons why my parents wanted to move me to the US is actually because of how difficult school is in China. They didn't want to make it unnecessarily rigorous for me, like the way that they had felt schooling is there, and so they brought me to the US. And so it's a stark difference because the amount of effort that I put into schooling in the US wasn't even 1/4 of the kind of effort that I put into schooling in China.
So let's fast forward to when you actually moved to America. Do you remember what that journey was like? Were you on a plane? Do you remember your parents telling you, hey, we're leaving China, we're going somewhere else? How'd you feel about that?
It was actually kind of funny because I thought it was more of a vacation, just like a really long vacation. It wasn't until I came to the US that my dad and my mom were kind of like, okay, well, where are we gonna live permanently? And I was like, I thought we were just here for like a month or two, so I guess I didn't really get the memo. But when I was packing, they told me to pack everything, and I was trying to pack every single aspect of my life into these like 2 or 3 small luggages. And I think even now to this day, I'm kind of a hoarder, and I pack really heavily because it kind of scarred me, like trying to move my entire life in China into 1 or 2 suitcases in the US. It's just not possible. But I do remember packing. I remember I tried to collect a lot of my dolls because they were really important to me for some reason. And there was like this really big doll that someone had given me. I think it was one of my grandparents, and it was just really important to me, and there was nowhere to fit in my suitcase. And so on the whole journey over to America, I carried that one doll on my shoulder the entire way, like on the plane and on the train and everything. And I remember my mom wanted this hat, and my grandparents asked me, can you carry this hat for your mom? It was like a fedora. And I was like, of course, it's for my mom. And I like protected that thing along with my doll, like with my life. And
do you still have those items?
I actually can't find either of them, which is really sad. I think the doll might be in my room somewhere. The fedora I haven't seen, which kind of makes me sad because I protected that stuff with my life. But I remember going to Hong Kong first because it was kind of like the gateway to America, since it's more modern and it was ruled by the British at the time. So it was very easy to leave from that port. When I was in Hong Kong, I stayed with my dad because that's where he worked. I was there for about 3 months. And it was very fun. I enjoyed it. I remember he took me to karaoke a lot of times. It's really different from karaoke here because karaoke over there, you sing in front of everyone, the entire building. You don't get the individual room, but I really liked it. It was a lot of fun. I got to entertain the masses, and they were just like, oh, we're just cute little girls. It was all good.
So were you singing Chinese songs?
I was singing Chinese songs.
Do you remember any?
I remember a few from my childhood, but because I haven't spoken Chinese in so long, I don't remember all the words. I'm kind of embarrassed to say.
Can you give us maybe like a verse of your singing?
I don't remember the words, but there's this one song that goes na 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 and that's actually from a drama that my brother and I used to watch a lot.
What was that drama called?
Really don't remember, but I think it was something about like the royal empress and emperor era, something like that, some sort of a love story. I remember my dad, when we were in Hong Kong, he told me these are mangoes, and it was the first time I ever saw a mango, and I really, really wanted one because fruits in China are expensive for some reason, and there's like a guy pushing a mango cart down in his office. I was like, I need that mango, and he was like, okay, I'm gonna go run after him for you. But he tried to chase the guy down, but the guy went off somewhere and he couldn't find them, and he's like, well, I can't give you the mangoes, but I have these strawberries. I was like really disappointed. I was like, fine, I'll take the strawberries. So he bought me this big packet of strawberries. I ate them, and then the mango guy came back. I was like, there's a mango guy, I want the mangoes now. And so he bought me the mangoes too. Life was really good in Hong Kong because my dad was he was doing really well in his business. I would say we were probably like upper middle class. His office was really big, had a big view of the ocean, just looking out the window, and it was really a glamorous life for those 3 months. It was a stark contrast to Zhuzhou because it's a very small province. Things are kind of run down, kind of more of a rural area. We made do, but my grandparents and my aunts and uncles were also a little bit more conservative with their money. So I remember it was really, really hot in the summers, and my grandparents absolutely refused to buy an air conditioner because those things were about $200 US back in the day, and my parents didn't want me to suffer, and so they offered to buy one for our house. But my grandparents were just like, no, that's just extraneous, it's not a necessity, you don't need one. But I remember spending a lot of time with my brother. We would do like the most silly things ever, aside from watching those dramas. I remember the day before I left Zhuzhou, we made this video recording of, hey, these are gonna be our last few moments together. And so I was recording him, and he went to the kitchen, he was like chopping up vegetables. He was pretending to be his dad, and his dad cooks like really loudly. And so he was like doing bang, 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 like trying to make fun of his dad, and I recorded and I was still laughing. There was one really funny incident where my brother and I got really, really bored, and we were watching TV and we saw this show about like prisoners and what prison life was like. And because our family back in the day in Juzhou lived on so little because my grandparents were so simple, my brother and I saw on TV this guy eating chicken or something. We're like, oh my gosh, that looks so good. We should go to prison so we could eat chicken instead of noodles. And we were like, how can we get ourselves into prison? And so we were like brainstorming these ideas. So what we decided on was, we decided to do a prank call to the police, and we did. We prank called the police and we're basically like, this is a prank call, we want to go to prison, you should arrest us right now. And then we hung up. We gave them our address and everything. And then once we did that, we actually got really scared because we were like, oh my gosh, just because they eat good chicken doesn't necessarily mean that prison life is any good. Oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? So I actually got really scared and we like cowered under the table. And then the police actually came to our complex. And for some reason though, they got the wrong number. And so they actually went to our neighbor and they were like banging on the door like for a really long time. And I guess the neighbor opened up their door and there was like, you know, they told them there's like a miscommunication. The police were really angry and they left. And my brother and I were just looking at each other like, wow, that was like really close. But yeah, we spent a lot of good times together.
So fast forward to when you left Hong Kong and went to America. What was that transition like?
In Hong Kong, I believe we took a train from Juzhou over to Hong Kong, so it wasn't too bad. But from Hong Kong to America, I think it was like a 13 or 14-hour flight. And it was my first time on a plane, and I was motion sick, so the whole time I felt like I was gonna throw up. And once I got to America, I felt really woozy and really dizzy, and my ears were popping from the elevation, and I just felt really sick. My face was completely white. There was no flesh in my cheeks at all. And I remember seeing my mom at the airport waiting for my dad and I. We were coming up this escalator ramp, and for some reason, I guess she was really tired too or something. But I was really disappointed because she didn't look that happy to see me. And I was like kind of sad, and I guess I found out later that she was tired and stuff. But I was like, Mommy, look, I have your hat. And she didn't seem that excited to see me, so I was kind of sad. But once it came to US, it wasn't too bad. We stayed in California for a day or two with some friends, and I believe like the next day after I arrived to America, they took me to Disney World or Land, whichever one it is. And unfortunately, I don't remember that much about Disney. I remember like, you know, Mickey Mouse and other stuff here and there, but I don't know, I didn't know anything about America, so it was just like right there in my face, and it was a lot to take in. I remember the morning that I woke up from the day after the plane ride, there was actually a small earthquake that I slept through. People told me, oh yeah, there was an earthquake here, and I was really scared, and they were like, no, it's okay, it happens very commonly here. And after we were in California for a while, we moved down to this area called the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas, and it's a very stark contrast from China because in South Texas, the population is mostly Hispanic, probably like 95% Hispanic. So I actually thought that I was Mexican for a while, kind of. I would wear like a sombrero and wear like a flamenco dress and everything to school sometimes because we would get like extra culture points in our Spanish class. And I actually picked up Spanish really quickly. Living down there, the population was mostly under the poverty line, so most of the people were pretty poor. And it was stark contrast from living in China, especially coming from Hong Kong since my parents were doing so well. But once we moved to America, since my parents weren't citizens or permanent residents, we were basically on a student status. It was really difficult for them to find a job, and so we lived very, very simply. And I remember my parents were always telling me, even we had a lot of money, we don't want to spoil you, but right now we don't have that much money. But they try to do the best that they could for me growing up because they didn't want to make me feel left out. So whenever my friends went off to do something, they would try to like give me money to go. But because I was like a really good, understanding child, I didn't try to ask too much from them because I knew we were like kind of in a difficult situation. But living down there in South Texas, I actually picked up Spanish before I picked up English. They put me in an ESL class because it was English as a second language, but most of the people, they were Hispanic, so I actually learned all of my ABCs and how to count to like 100 in Spanish and all of my colors in Spanish before I even learned English, so that's kind of funny. Yeah, so I went from speaking Chinese to speaking Spanish to learning English.
You said you spoke a little Chinese now, right? Do you speak any Spanish still?
I actually have more fluent abilities in Spanish than Chinese, oddly as that is, because in schooling we had to take Spanish for 4 years in high school. So I'm very proficient reading and writing Spanish, and I can speak it here and there, but I think now that I've grown older and my mom and dad have tried to speak more Chinese to me, my conversational Chinese is still better than my Spanish. The reason why I lost is because I moved to the US when I was 7, so I never really had a really large understanding of Chinese to begin with, and it was just very basic vocabulary. And once I came here, because I spoke Chinese and I didn't know any English at all, my parents were really worried for me, and so they actually forced me to stop speaking Chinese altogether just to learn English, which actually I think backfired because now my Chinese isn't as good. Now my parents are saying about how China is going to be a large superpower and you should learn your Chinese, and I'm just like, well, it would have been easier if you had just not forced me to stop speaking it, but I'm trying to pick it up, and in the future I actually do want to take Chinese lessons or take a language course on Chinese because I do think it's important. And I went to China this past 2 summers ago, and it was really easy to pick it up, and I felt really strange not being able to speak Chinese in my own hometown. So I think it's really important, especially because even though I'm a foreigner and they know I'm from America, they can tell right away that I'm Chinese, especially with my mom, and so people will automatically start speaking Chinese to me, and I'm just kind of like speaking in fragments here and there. So yeah.
So growing up after 7 years old in America, in California, what was school like? How was it different, and what kind of friends did you make, and what did you guys do for fun?
It was really difficult first making friends in America. I remember that they had tried to put me in a class for first graders, even though I'd already taken first grade in China, because they were worried that my English skills weren't good enough. But I fought for it because I was like, no, I don't want to be held back. I can struggle, I can make it. And so they put me into the 2nd grade, and I actually ended up failing every single subject except for math because, you know, it's universal. There's not much speaking and reading and writing involved. But I failed English, failed language, failed social science, and everything basically that involved English. But I picked up English really quickly, probably in about a year and a half, and by 3rd grade I was proficient. I actually got into a GT course in 4th grade, so I was pretty proud of that. But I guess it's a lot easier to pick up English when you're smaller than when you're older. It was really difficult making friends though, because like I said, most of the population there was actually Hispanic, not actually Caucasian, and I was one of the few, if not only, Chinese person or Asian person period in that entire elementary school, since it was a really small city. It was called Edinburgh, Texas. And so little kids are really mean. And it's kind of funny because Hispanics are a minority too, but because they're the majority in that area, they thought of me as a minority and them as a majority. And they would actually tease me a lot. I still remember. It was really cruel because I was Asian, and they would do things like sing, Chinese people sound so funny. This is the way they count their money. Ching chong chang, blah blah blah. And it made me feel really bad. And I still remember every single day from 2nd grade, I would run home crying to my parents because every single day at school was just kind of a nightmare because people would just pick on me. And it was so sad because I didn't know why. Like, I mean, I guess I knew it was because I was Asian, but it's not like anything I could do, you know, to cure that. And actually growing up, I felt really ashamed to be Asian, to be honest. I really idolized Barbie because she was like the epitome of like this white Caucasian person, you know, with beautiful blonde hair and like big blue eyes, and she was light skinned, and you know, people like her would never get made fun of. And so I was actually really ashamed to be Asian when I was growing up because I was made fun of so much. I tried to do everything almost to kind of hide my ethnic roots because I didn't want to be singled out. I still remember distinctly the 2 people who picked on me the most. Their names were Raul and Michelle, and I still remember them to this day because it was just so traumatizing. So these were some of the things that they did. So like Michelle, one time we were in this line for the water fountain and we only had 5 minutes. She purposefully stood in front of me. I got in behind her and she let every single person cut in front of me, so that I was basically the very last person to get to the water fountain, and I was the only person that was late to class. Another time, because I didn't know what chalk was, she lied to me and she said that it was a piece of hard candy, like a weird marshmallow or something, and it was like green, so I thought, oh, okay, it's like Easter candy or something, and so I started eating the chalk because I had no idea. It was really cruel. And another time we did like sing-alongs in class, and we had Lion King sing-alongs, and they started singing, and then she was singing too, and whenever I started singing, she would glare at me like, you don't belong here kind of attitude. I don't even remember what Saul did to me, but I think one time he like I don't know, he did something really weird with my clothes, and he like threw my clothes somewhere, and I had to go into the bathroom and look for them or something. And it was just really hard making friends in general because my English wasn't proficient. I remember on the school playground, I was really shy and timid because I didn't know how to talk to people. I felt out of my element, and people would play, you know, these Foursquare games and stuff, and I would just kind of like stand off in the corner. And I basically was not picky at all with who I was friends with. Whoever befriended me, I took them, whether they were a good person or not. I actually befriended some people who were not very positive influences on my life, but because they were just, you know, willing to at least even be a friend, I took them. And so there was this one girl who would call me every single day, and I don't know, my parents eventually told me to, you know, not pick up the phone because she was just taking too much of my time with not letting me study for stuff because she just wanted to talk. I remember there was this one girl that was kind of nice. She would invite me to like play games with her and her group. I remember I would talk a lot to that one girl. Her name is Ashley. The nice girl, her name was Roxanne. She even got me a sweater for my birthday in elementary school, and I thought that was really nice. It didn't fit me, but still, it was a nice thought. My grandma actually passed away when I was 6 years old, about I think a couple months before I left for China, and it was December of the year right before when I left. And I remember my mom telling me that she was really sad because it was actually, I think, Christmas Eve when it happened, and so somehow somebody in America knew, and they called my mom and they told her the news, and it was like the worst Christmas that she ever had because her mom passed away. It was due to an vehicle accident rather. And I remember in first grade, I was so sad because this was like the one person who was the most important in my life. She was the one person who took care of me, was there for me from day one, and I still kept questioning like why her of all people, why did this happen? And I remember trying to like track down the person who, you know, was involved and trying to like punish him and stuff, but like it was really hard to like track the person down because police in China, there's always scurried because there's always bigger things to take care of. And I was so mad at the police that they didn't do more to like track down who, you know, was involved with my grandmother's death. But I still remember the night that it happened. I guess my grandpa got a call from the hospital, and they basically said that your wife is in the hospital, and my grandpa like woke up with a start. Actually, it's really weird. My grandpa woke up with a start and had this nightmare that there was something wrong with his wife, but he didn't know what. And then sure enough, a couple hours later, the hospital calls him and tells him that your wife is in the hospital. And then basically, I think my aunt, my grandpa, and I rushed to the hospital. We just took like this little pedicab thing, and I remember still walking down the streets of, I guess, the downtown area there, even though it's not much of a downtown, and I was just mortified. I was so terrified of like what was gonna happen and stuff. And I still remember trying to go into the room to see where my grandma was, and she was basically already covered in this white blanket, and I was just really sad, I guess. And I went to the funeral, and I kind of cried, but I didn't really, I guess some people say, oh, you were too young to really know what death was like, and you just didn't cry because you didn't know, you know, how to express yourself. But to this day, I think the reason why I didn't cry, because at the time I was very logical, and I'm thinking, well, if I cry, it's not going to bring her back, it's not going to do anything. If I cry, it's just all selfish because I'm just crying because I miss her and because I can't have her in my life, so there's no point in crying. But I did miss her a lot. And in China, or maybe in other cultures, we like burn these certain pieces of paper in a fire, and it's supposed to represent money in the next life for the person who has passed away. So I remember my brother, my sister, and I kneeling, and I remember trying to burn as much paper as I could because I wanted to help my grandma in the future life as much as I could. But I remember when I came to America, I was still really sad about that, and so it was a really personal thing. But I told some of the people that I guess I was friends with, and I don't know, it helped me get over her death a little bit. But it was just really difficult making friends, A, because I was Asian, I was made fun of all the time, B, because I didn't know English, and C, because I was still like so traumatized and sad over my grandmother's death. I just wasn't even in the mood to make friends. So that was my second grade year. Third grade year got a little bit better. I made a couple of friends, and I stopped getting teased on as much because I wasn't the foreigner as much because I already went through second grade with these people. Another thing about going to that school wasn't just the fact that I was Asian, but because I went to second grade instead of first grade like everybody else. So everybody already knew each other from first grade, but I just kind of jumped right in, and so I was like this extra foreign person. But in third grade, people already kind of like knew who I was, so it wasn't as bad. I didn't get picked on as much. By fourth grade, I transferred to a different school for the gifted and talented program, and I stopped getting picked on altogether. So that was really good. But it was still really difficult making friends because I was so shy and because I just really fell out of my element, and I didn't really start making friends on my own until 6th grade and middle school. And those were some of my best times actually, because I actually had a best friend and she showed me anime and stuff. To this day, I still like anime because of her. She showed me Sailor Moon. She like opened my eyes to that stuff. And actually, yeah. In 6th grade, my best friend at the time, her name is Tammy Huang. To this day, I'm still friends with her. Actually, went to the same college as her, as UT, but she's kind of reserved too, and she met her boyfriend, and now they go to like University of Texas, El Paso together, so I don't like talk to her much. But she was really into math. She got me into the math club. She was really into anime. She got me into anime, and to this day, actually, I'm really into anime, and it's kind of due to her. Surprising how people influence your life, but I would say my 2nd and 3rd grade experiences were really just kind of negative childhood eras that I prefer to not think about just because they just weren't that pleasant. In the neighborhood where I grew up in Edinburgh, though, I made friends with these 3 children that lived just down the street, and they were Hispanic, and I would play with them, and they were a little bit younger than me. One was 1 year younger than me, another one was like maybe 3 years younger, and there was like a little girl, she was like 5 or 6, and I bonded really well with her. Her name was Samantha, and I took care of her like a little sister. And I've always wanted siblings, since in China we have like a one-child rule, and so I kind of took care of her as like my little sister and just really bonded well with her, and we would play all the time. So where I lived in Edinburgh wasn't bad, it was the schooling. But 4th and 5th grade got better as far as the teasing, but I was still known as this, shy girl. And during recess, people would eat lunch together in the cafeteria, and I remember it was always really hard trying to find people to eat with because I just didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. And occasionally I would find a group and I would eat with them, and sometimes I would just sit at a table by myself. It sounds really sad and lonely, but that's because it was. And I still remember I really hated the school lunches because most of it was Mexican food, but it wasn't like good Mexican food. It was like really cheesy, gross, oily Mexican food. And coming from China, I was not used to that at all. And so I would like just really not eat lunch a lot of the time. And then eventually my dad started packing sandwiches for me, and it got a little bit better. To this day, I don't drink milk, especially stuff that isn't soy or stuff that isn't chocolate milk, because I remember the first time I went to school, I found a dead fly in my milk, in the milk carton. I opened it up and there was a fly, and I was like, no milk for me for the rest of my life ever. And the gifted talented program was pretty cool. I remember I played a lot of badminton because it was one of the sports I was better at in elementary school during 4th and 5th grade, and I kind of bonded with the people that played badminton too. But during recess, we would all go into the gym, and they have tennis, they have badminton, they'd have like some sort of a volleyball thing. And because I wasn't very good at volleyball either, I just always kind of just stood off by the side. And my friends, well, I guess the people that I went to school with, we would just all kind of play together, and I just felt really awkward, and I would just like stand off in the corner and watch them play, and I didn't know who to talk to, didn't know who I could be friends with. And I guess secretly inside I was still afraid that people were gonna make fun of me, so I'd rather just keep to myself. And recess was really boring. I remember a couple of times I would go to the bathroom, not because I had to go to the bathroom, but because literally I had nothing else to do, and because I had no one to talk to and everybody else was socializing. It felt so awkward, so I just like went to the bathroom for all of recess. Yeah, those times were kind of lonely, not really bad necessarily, but just really lonely. I remember one thing that really bothered me was when I went to 4th and 5th grade in Canterbury Elementary in Edinburgh. They would start teaching us, the Pledge of Allegiance and the national anthem, and they would tell you to put your hand over your heart. And to this day, like I do now, because I feel more American, especially because I'm a permanent resident now. But back then I felt very proud to be from China. I'm very proud of my ethnicity. So every single time they would make me sing the Star Spangled Banner, and put my hand over my heart and say like, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I just really hated it because I didn't feel American. Didn't feel like I should be pledging my allegiance to a country that I'm not from, that I didn't feel a part of. I wanted to pledge allegiance to China, not to America. And so I hated that. And sometimes they would even like have us recite Bible verses in class, and I wasn't Christian or anything, and so it just really made me feel out of my element. Middle school was a lot better. I made friends, and we had this program in Texas. I guess it might be all over the U.S., but it's called UIL. It's basically like a extracurricular organization. We can compete in like drama, in math, and calculator application, things like that. And so I took drama in my 6th grade year and my 7th grade year because I don't know, it seemed like a lot of fun, and I was really attracted to drama because, like I said, coming into middle school, I felt like this shy, awkward little Asian girl that just didn't fit in everywhere. And so I really enjoy drama because on stage you can be someone else. You don't have to be that shy, awkward girl that you're known for. You could be like this loud, outgoing girl. You could be like this, or you could be this really smart person. You could just be whoever you wanted to be. So I love drama. And I got involved in UIL drama for my first 2 years. And we also did this other thing called recomime, which is basically where you lip sync to a song and then you like dance. And to this day, I do choreography for different organizations, and I do a lot of modern hip hop dance because of that. So 6th grade and 7th grade really influenced me quite a bit, you know, with the whole anime, math, and the choreography thing. And I don't really do as much drama nowadays because the high school I went to, they didn't really have extracurriculars because it's magnet school for math and science. And magnet school is basically a better private school. Usually it's built in a very like kind of run down, kind of shady area where people are kind of under the poverty line because they want like one central school that attracts all of the best and brightest from the area. So I went to magnet school. You can kind of think of it as a private school, except it was public and everything was free. And so because it was so geared towards math and science, they didn't have band, they didn't have football, they didn't have cheerleaders, they didn't have any sort of sports, any sort of like drama or dancing, which I really missed. I really missed the Rokemon. But it's kind of funny. Sometimes my friends from the high school that I would have gone to would talk about homecoming and cheerleading and things like that. And they'd be like, oh, when's your homecoming? And I'd be like, what's a homecoming? I had no idea because we didn't have a football team. So it was like a stark contrast. But middle school were really good times. I did really well in school too. I still remember I had this one friend named Camille. And she was kind of a troublemaker, but she was really nice. I hung out with her a lot. And so in math class, I would always finish my work really quickly because I was good at math, and she wasn't as much. And we'd just sit in class, and Backstreet Boys and Britney Spears were really in at the time. And so she would just like start singing to Backstreet Boys or like Blink-182. And I like start singing with her just because, you know, she was like right next to me. And I was able to do that because I was able to get my work done, and I was able to like sing too. And to this day, I like still really enjoy singing like in public, even if like no one's listening because of that. And I really enjoyed that because it really kind of like brought me out of my shell. So I feel like middle school was the first time in my life where I really became social, and I felt kind of loved like for the first time, and not like this awkward person that didn't belong. I felt really integrated with my school. And I actually wanted to try for cheerleading, but for some reason I never really got around to it. And then I wanted to do it in high school, but then my high school didn't have cheerleading, so it just never really happened. And yeah, those were some really good times. High school was quite interesting since it was so focused on math and science, and because I was so good at it, people thought of me as like this well-liked popular girl, because back then in that school it wasn't about are you part of the jock team, are you part of the cheerleading team, you're popular. It was kind of like, can you do math well, you're popular. And so I was automatically popular just because I could do math well. So high school was like a really fun time too. It was very different. And once I came to UT, it was really different because my high school was really small. My graduating class was 94 people, and once I came to UT, I went to the school with 50,000 other people. So I had like a really difficult time adjusting at first, but that's okay.
So it sounds like you came out of your shell over the years from middle school and high school, but you were also very proud of your heritage coming from China. Was that an influence that came from home? Did your parents instill values, or did they emphasize Chinese culture to make you feel that way?
I think to an extent, yes. One was that I was really proud to come from China because it's just my motherland, and to this day I still think of China as my motherland. Yes, I'm an American, yes, I'm a permanent resident now, and I'll actually probably be a citizen soon. I just have to take the test in like 2 or 3 years, and I'll be proud I've lived here because I was so-called brought up here, and so I was nurtured by, you know, American customs and by American society. But at the same time, because I was born in China, because I did live up until 7 years old there, I will never forget it, and I will always be like really proud of my country. And also it is partially due to my parents. I remember I think when I was like 9 or 10, they finally bought the satellite dish so we could watch Chinese channels and stuff, and we would watch like the really big like national performances on the Spring New Year's festival and stuff like that. And my parents would also, you know, sing along to the anthem whenever the Olympics came around. And whenever I watch the Olympics too, whenever someone from China wins and they play the Chinese anthem, I still like hum to it and I put my heart over my chest because that's my country. I think part of it is my parents, but more of it's just me having grown up there and having been born and brought up there. It's just not something that I can forget. If people were to ask me, are you American? I would never just say, oh yeah, I'm just an American. If anything, I'm more Chinese than American because I wasn't a citizen for so long or a permanent resident. I actually just recently got my permanent residency in 2008. And so until then, I was basically a foreigner. So I had my Chinese citizenship. And I think at one point in my future life, I will actually have to make the distinction whether I want to be an American citizen or a Chinese citizenship because I don't know if dual citizenship is possible. And I remember my mom asking me if that came down to it, would you pick American or would you pick Chinese? And I told her, well, I'd love to be an American citizen, you know, for all the benefits, but I would have to go with Chinese because I just can't let my culture and my motherland go. There's no way. So it's kind of funny because I've been around Chinese culture all of my life growing up in America too, from watching the TV shows and listening to the sappy Chinese songs that my parents love. So I don't really feel the need to be so integrated with my culture, and because I've had such a large experience with Hispanic culture and with getting into Japanese culture with my friend, I'm really attracted to different cultures and different ethnicities and languages. So I like to explore other cultures rather than my own, but it's not because I'm not proud to be Chinese. I really am when it comes down to it, but I just don't feel like I need to take the time to listen to Chinese music to be integrated with my culture because my mom and dad did so much of that when I was younger. And I guess I just show my pride in different ways. When China hosted the Olympics in 2008, I really wanted to go, and my mom even bought me a plane ticket to China to go. But unfortunately, she was unable to get tickets to the actual Olympics, and so I basically stayed at home and watched it. But I remember crying a lot just because that was my home, like that is my home country, and we're doing something really large on a national worldwide scale. And it was the first time that I feel like people from the Western world, people from Europe, people from America were looking at China in an actual respected way. And so I don't know, when I went back to China in 2010, the past summer, I went to the Olympic Stadium, and it was just a lot of really touching memories for me. Even though I wasn't there, I was just overwhelmed by pride.
You mentioned mooncakes earlier. You also mentioned your refound taste for noodles, even though you didn't like them for a while. What are some other food items or other traditions in general that your family and you carried on from China over here to America?
One of the things that I really appreciate my parents for doing for me is instilling certain customs and values and ethics into me that are very Chinese or Asian based. I say Asian because I think a lot of other Asian cultures also practice the same. So one is a sense of family. You basically have to stick with your family through thick and thin. Even if they don't treat you the best or they don't understand you, you still have to love them just because they're your family, they're all you've got. Especially coming to America, my mom and dad were basically the only ones that I have. And to this day, since my dad has moved back to China in 2006 after I started my first year at UT, my mom is now the only person that I have as far as family in this entire side of the world. And they taught me to really respect my family and to respect my elders. And to this day, I still have, like, this is kind of bad, but I sometimes have a difficult time respecting people who are much younger than me just because it's been so instilled in me to respect people who are older. And now I've become a lot more Americanized, and so now I know when to say no. And so if like an older person is wrong about something, or I feel like they're just not in their place to do something, then I will actually, you know, stand up for myself. But back in the day, basically whatever an older person said, like, it went. You don't question it whatsoever. And that was one thing, a sense of family, a sense of really respecting your elders. And actually, when I went back to China, my aunts and uncles were joking around with my mom saying she's a really well-behaved American, because they have this idea from the media that Americans are really loud, really rambunctious, they're very disrespectful, they just run all over the place wild, and they were just kind of like, they call me Nini, that's kind of my nickname back at home, and they call me, Nini is so well behaved, she's not like those Americans at all, she must be like really quiet girl, like she's almost too quiet for an American, like are you sure she's gonna be okay to survive in America, because you know she has to speak up, she's too quiet, you know, like you can't keep her at home all day, you need to let her go out every once in a while. And I laughed because I'm totally not like that, I'm really loud, I go out a lot, and I'm really social now, but it's just that when I was in China, I knew that that is not my place to be like that, to be, you know, like loud and obnoxious and just all over the place. I had to control myself, and so whenever I greeted my grandparents, it was always like with a bow. I would always make my bed. I would always like try to offer assistance whenever I could. And my grandpa's getting really old, actually really old. When I was in China in 2010, he actually had his 80th birthday. And so he lives in a very kind of like rundown, kind of smelly house even, but it's the house that he grew up in. And so it's a house that he's always known, so he refused to be in a nursing home because it's just really unfamiliar to him. So my aunt and uncle on my mom's side would always come over and always try to like help him out and help him take a bath like every 2 or 3 days. And I remember my aunts and uncles, they were very proud of me because my sister, so-called sister, she is a little bit more, I guess, prissy in a way, and she always refused to go over to my grandpa's place because it was just like run down, really smelly, really dirty, and she refused to visit him. The most she would do was like stand outside the door. But my mom asked me, when we go visit your grandpa and when your aunts and uncles go to take care of him, do you want to walk in and do you want to like say bye to him before we leave for America? It's going to be pretty much the last time you see him until next time, but you don't know if there will be a next time because he's really old and you know his memory is already starting to be lost. And I said, of course. He's my grandpa. He took care of me when I was like 2 all the way to when I was 7. There is no way that I could not step inside that house and say goodbye to him. Like that would just be the most wrong thing to me ever. And I still remember in the summer of 2010 when I said bye to my grandpa. The house was really small, it was really run down, but you know, you just gotta suck it up. I was really used to, you know, the air-conditioned, nice, like modern homes in America, especially because I live in a really nice apartment now, but you just have to tone it down because when it comes down to it, family is family. You know, you gotta suck it up. You can't be so picky about the conditions that you're meeting family in. And so I said goodbye to him, and by then he already didn't really speak very much, and so, but he does show emotion. But my mom basically said that her and I were gonna go back to America, but because she doesn't want to make things sad for my grandpa, she doesn't want to say my daughter and I are leaving to America. What she says is I'm going to work, and so we write things to him on a piece of paper because his reading abilities are still intact. And so she wrote, Nina and I are going to work, but he like understood and he started crying even though he couldn't speak, and I just like broke down and I started bawling too because like it's my grandpa. It's like someone that I really love, and it's really sad because my mom went back to China like this past summer, and she was telling me about how like he's not doing so well, and they finally like moved him to a nursing home, and I was just really concerned. I was like, are they gonna take care of him? Are they treating him well? Because he was being taken care of by this, I guess, like this man nanny for a while, and like that person was not treating him well at all. He would smoke around my grandpa, he would drink, he would bring women over, and I was just shocked when I went over to China that someone could do something like that. But there was like nothing that I can do because I'm here in the US, and my mom didn't have enough money to pay for airfare for myself and for her to go back to China, but I really wanted to see him. So I honestly don't know if I will see my grandpa ever again. So that last moment I had with him in his house where he grew up and where he lived, and saying goodbye to him and bawling my eyes out and taking a picture with him is going to be probably one of my fondest memories, especially because I already lost my grandma on my mom's side. And I never really so-called got to properly say goodbye to her since it was an untimely death. She was about 60 years old when she passed away. So with my grandpa, I felt like, I had to make it official. And so my aunts and uncles were very proud of me that I actually went to the house to say goodbye to him, but it's like, how can I not, like, you just do what you have to do. So a sense of family is just something that they've really instilled. Along with that, they've instilled a sense of the need to be obedient around older people. And so again, that's why my aunts and uncles were so surprised that I was so timid when I went over there, because I was just really reserved and I tried to not speak unless they spoke to me. I just try to be really respectful, even though they were really concerned that I would be like that in America, and they know how, people really have to stand up for each other. But, I just dealt with it, and I just try to do everything I could for my family. And so to this day, I keep thinking in my head, these people are people that have taken care of me from day one. And so one of my dreams and one of my goals is when I guess I get rich and famous, I do want to bring as much of my family members over to the US as I can, because all that they've known, including my aunts and uncles, are just this really simple life. So simple to the point where they don't, go to a grocery market. They basically go to people selling vegetables on the side of the sidewalk, and they make their food themselves, and they don't actually have a toilet. It's just basically a hole in the ground. So it's like really difficult getting used to that at first, but I got used to it, and I want to bring them over to America to show them how grand and how luxurious life can be. I want to like buy them a mansion, just stick them in a mansion and just visit them. I think they might actually feel uncomfortable because it might be like too nice, but I don't know. It's like one of my goals is to, really treat my family out when I'm older, because there's just really no way that I can respect, like repay them for what they've given me. Other cultural things that they've instilled are certain holidays. We do celebrate Chinese Lunar Festival, and we don't have the satellite dish anymore, but we used to always watch the festivals on TV, and it was just like a great bonding time for my mom, dad, and I. And my mom still like sends me mooncakes. She gives me like a red envelope for money and stuff. And we don't really do this quite anymore, but every single year on Chinese Lunar New Year Festival, we would call like almost every single family member long distance. And by then my Chinese wasn't so good, and also some of my family members speak a very strange dialect depending on where you're from, and so I could barely understand them to begin with, but I would always have to say a couple words just because they're family. And so I would just be like, 这是娜娜, which is basically, this is Nina, and I say like, 你好吗, things like that, which is basically like, how are you, and just like 5-minute greeters, but it's just like a mandatory tradition every single year. As far as language, my parents felt it was really important for me to learn English so that I could survive in America, and so they stopped speaking Chinese to me for a while, but now they're just really instilling that I learn Chinese, and it is something that's on my list of priorities. I'm not as good about it as I should be, but sometimes I will ask my mom to speak to me in Chinese when she visits. I'm really bad about it though, because as far as Chinese, I understand it very well, but I don't speak it that well, because there's certain vocabulary words I just can't remember. So sometimes I'll speak in like a mixture of Mandarin English, so I'll say like, 我去 store, or 我去 shopping mall, which is basically like I'm going to the shopping mall. And so it'll be like a weird mix. But sometimes my mom will speak to me in Chinese and I'll answer her in English, but I'm gonna try to get better at that. So those are some of the things that my parents have instilled in me coming over here.
You spoke of very ambitious goals of becoming rich and famous. On that note, can you talk about your decision as to which college you went to, what you're studying, and what your career goals are?
Of course. When I was in high school, I was heavily influenced by math and science because of the school that I went to. So we were also very involved with engineering, and I really loved engineering back in high school because it was very hands-on. I still remember for my digital electronics class, we made like this alarm clock, and we made like this battery operated generator, and it was really cool that you could create something from nothing, just from a series of schematics on the screen. You could create this live board, this breadboard that actually works and displays stuff and counts stuff. And in my computer integrated manufacturing class, it was more like, I guess, mechanical engineering. We would design like a little product on the screen. We used this program called AutoCAD, which I think a lot of like car manufacturers use. And so you basically like design the patterns on the screen. This is a picture, and then you print out a series. Well, basically, you take that picture and you insert into this other program, and it prints out a whole series of machine code. And then you like feed it to this machine. You add some other codes here and there, and then you take it to a milling machine. My school was very advanced because we're actually, not to brag, ranked top 8th public school in the nation as far as high schools in US Newsweek. And so we get a lot of funding. And we also do a lot of partnerships with Rice University, which is a very prestigious university in Texas. And we also do a partnership with Rochester Institute of Technology there in the Northeast. And so we get a lot of funding from just grants and scholarships and things like that. And so we actually have very expensive equipment in my high school. It's called Science Academy. And we have a milling machine, and so you take the machine code, you feed it into the machine, and you take a piece of material, like I guess like a 4 by 3 by 2 inch of I forget what it's called, some sort of a pliable wood, and you stick it in the machine. It actually makes the product for you, it like drills everywhere. And so I actually have this jewelry box that I made in 11th grade, and I actually still have it. And I actually do keep my jewelry in it, and I'm really proud of the fact that I made that. As far as applying to colleges though, I wanted to go to like the top colleges in the nation because, as an Asian, it was just like required of me. It's like, you can't go to just whatever college everybody else goes. You have to go to the best ones in the nation. You have to go to an Ivy League school. And it was also more pressure on me because out of the 3 children, between me, my sister, and my brother, my sister and my brother were not so academically inclined. They were more goof-offs and just, prefer to like just goof off and hang out and just not really take their studies seriously. And so I was kind of like the model child of the family, even though I was the youngest. And because my mom and my dad were one of the few people that actually got to have a bachelor's education in our family. Our family was considered like the good family, and so my whole family had a lot of high dreams and hopes for me, especially because we came to America and we were like, the go-getters. And so I applied to a lot of the Ivy League schools, but it was also really difficult because I was an international student and I had to apply as one. And for colleges outside of the state, I would have had to pay out-of-state tuition since they were private universities, and also applied for some scholarships, but it was difficult getting scholarships because the criteria for international students as opposed to students within the country are quite different. Basically, as an international student, you're applying against everyone who's international, who's out of the country, for maybe 5 or 6 spots for scholarships. So I was competing against essentially, people from Europe, people from, from Malaysia, people from Africa, people from Germany, and there are some really smart people in this world. So I applied to Stanford University. That was my dream school. Some people say, oh, you only wanted to go there because your ex went there, but it's not that. It's just I really like the idea of moving to California, and I heard the weather is gorgeous there, the campus is gorgeous, like the engineering program, top notch, everything else about their other programs top notch. I just really want to go to Stanford. But I saw on their international scholarship awards that they only award to I think 6% of all scholarship applicants, and of course every year a lot of people apply, so I didn't get a scholarship to go. I applied to a bunch of schools, but the only school that actually got accepted into that was an Ivy League was Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. And my mom was really happy about that because she actually got into Cornell University as well, but she couldn't go there because of financial issues, and so she ended up going to the University of Texas Pan American, which is way lower of a tier, but it was a public school, it was affordable, and that's actually why we ended up in South Texas for her program. Her program itself in that school was pretty good, so that's why she went there. She wasn't too picky about the location. But as far as Cornell, the day I found out that I got accepted, my mom was really proud because I guess she was kind of wanting to live vicariously through me by me getting accepted. But unfortunately, I didn't get any money for scholarships to go, so it was like another FML story with my mom and I, because we both got accepted, but we both couldn't go because we just didn't have that kind of money. Tuition there at the time, I believe in 2005 when I graduated, was about 35 grand a year, and my mom at that time pretty much made 35 grand a year. So considering our living expenses and my dad not having a job and her having to take care of all 3 of us, it was just not feasible. My mom was a very hard worker, and And to this day, I really respect her for that because she just really tried to make it here in the US. We were very limited in the kind of jobs we could hold because we weren't permanent residents. So we couldn't have a green card and we couldn't have this alien resident card that other people do. And so the only kind of jobs that we could hold were either self-employed jobs or jobs that were involved with education because we came here on a student visa, or like waitressing jobs or jobs that pay cash under the table. And so at one point in time, my mom had 5 jobs. She was a full-time PhD student, she was a professor's assistant, she taught aerobics at the university, she was a waitress, and she also did some sort of like a research grad thing. And so I knew how hard my mom worked. I would go to school not being able to see her because she would already be at work, and sometimes when I stay up late till like 2 or 3 in the morning, I see her come home from her job. So literally she was gone from probably 7 in the morning all the way till 2 in the morning the next day. So I really saw my mom, but I just really respected her and I loved her for all that she did for my family. And so she tried to borrow money here and there for me to go to Cornell because it was kind of her dream for me to go to school too, but it was just too much money. And another thing was that to go to Cornell, it wasn't even just you could just pay year by year and have that done. As an international student, there were some really stringent laws. And so one of the rules and regulations is that as an international student, you actually have to prove on this form, I think it's like an F1 form, you have to prove basically that you can pay for all 4 years of your college tuition before you even step foot in the door, otherwise you're not going. And so it wasn't that my mom and I had to come up with 35 grand that year, it was more like my mom and I had to come up with like 125 grand for that year before I could even think about going to Cornell. And so that was just not even practical. So I ended up applying to University of Texas at Austin because my mom basically forced me. She was like, if you don't get in any of the schools, you have to apply to school as a backup. And I was so offended because I was ranked so well and doing so well in my high school career. I was number 9 graduating out of my high school, and I just really excelled in every single one of my subjects. I was really involved in all my extracurricular subjects. 2, I apparently was in more extracurricular organizations than anybody else in the entire school, like ever, because every single year we do this program that's in a compilation with Rice University where they select 35 people from the junior class and you get a tour of Rice University in Houston. They take you everywhere to like NASA, TI, and Six Flags, all for free basically for 2 weeks. It's because they want you to go to their school when you graduate as a senior. And so on that application, I had to write how many organizations I was involved in. Apparently it was 13. So I felt like I deserved to get into a good school, especially with my credentials. But I didn't want to apply to UT because I was basically really proud and I was like, I'm too good for UT. UT is a public school and it's in Texas. I wanted to get away as far away from the Rio Grande Valley as possible because this is not the best place to be. It's just so impoverished, so rural, so backwards. I wanted to go to like New York or California, anywhere but Rio Grande Valley. And so I was like, Austin, that's only like 5 hours away, that's not far enough. But my mom was like, well, you have to have a backup. She basically wouldn't let me do anything until I finished that Texas Common App, and thankfully it only took me like I think 20 or 30 minutes, so I did it. And I'm really glad that she did because I ended up going to UT because the one school I got into I couldn't afford. So had it not been for that, I probably would have been in pretty big trouble. So I ended up going to the University of Texas at Austin. Like I said, I was really into engineering in high school and I was very good at it. And so when I went to UT, I felt like it was a slap in the face because that school wasn't good enough for me. So I got into the engineering program and I basically tried to make myself stand out because I was basically thinking in my head, I'm better than all these other people here. I'm better than the non-engineering students. I'm even better than engineering students. I'm smarter than everyone. I shouldn't even be here kind of attitude. I still remember for freshman orientation in the summer, they made us do all of these chants and cheers because football is a really big thing at UT and everybody's like always proud to be from UT because we have really good athletics teams and stuff. And they would teach us the Texas, like the Texas Hook'em song and like the TETXXXXAS and all these football cheers, and everybody would be like really into it, the incoming freshmen. I was just there like basically half doing my Longhorn sign, like not really caring, thinking I don't belong here, I'm too good for this. But then once I got into the electrical engineering program at UT, I got my ass handed to me because that program is not easy at all. People there are really smart, as I realized. I'm not the only smart cookie in the house. And as a matter of fact, most of my peers I felt were doing better than I was. And so engineering school, I think the percentage of guys to girls was probably like 3 guys to every girl. And some of them were just naturally inclined to that stuff. And so I realized I'm not good at this when I would be staying up till like 4 or 5 in the morning to do an assignment just to make a C. And I realized it also wasn't as fun as it was in high school, because at UT, since it's a large research school, some of the professors are just really not that qualified, and they kind of teach you a lot of theory, but they don't really teach you where any of it goes. So you learn how to program, you learn about these machines, you read about it, but you never get to make a product. And so I felt like, you know, this is not really contributing to my life, because A, is really hard, B, I don't seem to be very naturally talented at it, and C, I don't really enjoy it. So it took me a while though to switch because of the whole pride issue. I thought I'm too good to be in any other major. I need to be engineering because at least, you know, I'll be holding on to something from high school. But eventually I switched. I ended up doing economics because I wanted to do business, but I found out way too late in my career that I wanted to do business, and by then my GPA wasn't high enough to get into business school, because UT's business school is actually ranked, I think, top 5 in the nation. And so to transfer internal is very difficult, because they don't want you just leaving one college within UT and going to another, because then everyone would be doing that. And so I did economics because I guess that was the closest thing to business. But eventually I want to study either accounting or finance as a master's, partially influenced through my parents, since they did do a lot of business when they were in China. Yeah, so I switched out of engineering after 1.5 years, but it was really hard for me to let go of it because of the whole pride issue, and I thought I was too good and too smart to be any other major. But in the end, I'm really glad, because I think my life would have been a lot more miserable. I also started eventually getting more integrated into the whole UT culture. What really turned me into football is the fact that one time I was at home watching the A&M versus UT game, and I saw that we won. It was in 2005. It was the Vince Young years, the good years, and I was just really proud because my school won against A&M. I always knew about the rivalry, and I was just really proud. And then what really did it for me was in January of, I believe, 2006, the national championships. I didn't know that UT had made it to the national championships. I actually had no idea what it was even. But I had gone out with my friends. I had just gone home. I flipped on the television. It was really late at night, and for some reason, I guess national championship was on. We only had basic cable back in our house in Harlingen, and I saw Vince Young and I saw my school colors, and I was like, hey, that's interesting. That's my school right there on TV. Why are we on TV? I don't know. And it was like the last 20 seconds of the game, and I believe we were playing USC that year, and they were like a really good school. And so I watched the last 20 seconds of that game, and I basically saw Vince Young do some amazing Superman stuff on TV, catching that ball, and I was like shocked. And I was like, all right, I'm a believer. Longhorn football it is. So ever since then, I've been really, really proud to be from my school. It's a complete 180 from whenever I started. And to this day, I'll be going to UNAFSA conference from tomorrow until Sunday, and I'm going to be really proud to be from the South. I got a lot of people to go because I want us to rep it hard this year, and I even went to the University Co-op to buy a burnt orange dress because—
What is UNAFSA?
I gotta show it off. UNAFSA stands for the Union of North American Vietnamese Student Associations. And it's basically, on the simplest level, an organization for Vietnamese youth in colleges and young professionals around the country. I was very involved in VSA at my school from 2008 onwards. VSA stands for Vietnamese Student Association, and part of the reason why I was so involved is because at my school, since there's so many different Asian populations, VSA was the largest, and it was basically the go-to group for Asian Americans. Whether you're Vietnamese, Filipino, or Chinese, VSA was like the thing to join, and a lot of my friends were in it. So I was like, okay, I'll go check it out. Another thing that motivated me to join VSA is the fact that I went to this pool party. I was originally in Japanese Association for a while, actually. There was a joint pool party with CSA, JA, and VSA, and while I was there, the VSA officers that year were just really outgoing, really nice. They just like reached out to me. They're like, hi, and you know, you should come check out our organization. I was like, well, I'm not Vietnamese, and they're like, no, it's okay, like neither are we. And it was really funny that year. Most of the officers were actually Taiwanese. They were actually not Chinese. So there was a Hispanic officer. There was a Taiwanese president. His name's Johnny Lam, and I met my friend Jiwei, who I'm still friends with now. He'll be going to UNAFSA conference, and he was Taiwanese too, and he was like some sort of an outreach coordinator. And so a lot of people on the officer staff were not Vietnamese, so I felt like, okay, it's an organization that I can join because, I don't have to be Vietnamese to join.
Why do you think there's so many non-Vietnamese people on the e-board of VSA?
I think part of the reason is just that our VSA is so diverse and so inclusive. They just try really hard to not discriminate against others, and because they are the largest organization on campus, they want to make it bigger and better, and how else to do it but to incorporate more and more people. And I guess maybe they just had an interest to really expand Vietnamese culture amongst non-Vietnamese youths. And so I started going to VSA, but I was still a little bit shaky because I kept thinking, I don't really belong here, I'm not Vietnamese, for like a whole year. But then
your first exposure to Vietnamese people in general, Vietnamese culture?
My first exposure to Vietnamese people was during orientation of UT. It was Austin was my first exposure to Vietnamese people because there were absolutely no Vietnamese people in the Rio Grande Valley. There were probably 3 or 4 Chinese people going to my high school, like probably 2 or 3 Koreans, 1 Japanese person. There were no black people too in that area. A lot of Hispanics, some Caucasians, and no Vietnamese people. There were a couple of Filipinos. So I met Vietnamese people for the first time ever when I went to Austin. And I actually was so out of touch with my Asian side that I actually got taken to a bubble tea place, a tapioca place, the first time in Austin. Had no idea what it was. My friends were like, do you want to get tapioca? And I was like, what's tapioca? It was really sad. And I still remember the first time I ended up at UT, we went to this restaurant called Madame Am's, and there were, I think, 13 of us there. It was me, my friend, and some out-of-towners. And I actually took a picture because I was like, there's 13 Asians in one building. This is like incredible. Oh my goodness, it's like a turning point in my life. So I took a picture to document it. Now it's not so weird. I'm going to a conference with like 250 other Vietnamese youth. It's fine. But the first time I was just really shocked. So my first time was during orientation. They were really nice, and so I felt like, okay, this is something I can do. And so in my second year being a part of VSA, which was in 2008, I became an intern, which is basically like a junior officer. I started getting more involved. Oh, another reason why I got involved with VSA is because I was volunteering for some Chinese Student Association Lunar New Year festival or something, and they had like a fashion show, and I was in it. And I was friends with this girl named Amy Han, and she was some sort of like a community director as well. She happened to be practicing some Vietnamese culture dance for their annual culture show in the spot right next to us, and they were doing some sort of like this handkerchief dance, and she needed 1 person because somebody was missing. And I just finished the fashion show run through, and she was like, hey Nina, do you mind like stepping in real quick? And I was like, oh, okay, sure. So I did it, and it was kind of fun. And she's like, hey, would you mind just like being in there permanently because this person hasn't been very reliable? I was like, okay. And so I ended up being in their culture show dance in 2007, and I was like, okay, this is really fun. And so I got more involved, and as an intern, we hosted different events like fundraisers and just attending events from other regions, which is part of the reason why I'm so involved with UNAFSA too. For the first time, I went out to other VSA's events. So I went to University of Texas at Arlington's Daihui, which is supposed to be the Asian Olympics, and it's hosted by 3 different schools. They rotate, and it's basically Vietnamese youth from all over Texas come over and they compete in this 3-day event. It was really fun. And so I started going out to more regional events, just kind of expanding outside of our VSA. And in that year, UNAFSA conference was being held in Portland, Oregon, and I saw on the event invitation that people like Ji-Wei and Kevin Javier, some friends of mine, were going, but I found out about it too late. I found out about it a week before it was supposed to happen. I knew there's no way I could buy like a $500 plane ticket last minute to go, but I told myself in my head, I'm going to UNAFSA next year no matter what. Like even if I have to like pull a lot of strings, I'm going. And so I made plans to go to UNAFSA in 2009. And that was basically the end of my internship, I guess, with VSA. And it was really hectic because the day that UNAFSA, the night before UNAFSA started was actually the night that I was supposed to move out of my apartment. And so I had booked my plane ticket. Well, I was trying to fly really last minute, so the legit plane tickets were really expensive. I think they were like $300, but I was still 22 or 21 at the time. And so my friend Ji-Wei told me about this program called AirTran U, where you could basically fly standby for $79 anywhere to and from Atlanta. And so there's no AirTran airline in our city, so I had to go to Dallas for some reason. And it was just my luck that some people were actually driving from Austin to Atlanta, and they were passing through Dallas, so I asked them if they could just take me along the way. But it was basically go with them or don't go at all. And so I wasn't finished moving out of my apartment. Thankfully, I have some really good friends. My friend Roger, who's part of VAF, actually helped me out along with 2 other people move out of my apartment. I felt really bad. I was basically like, I need to get in this car so I can go to Dallas, so I can fly to Atlanta. Can you help me move all of this stuff to the U-Haul? And here's my key. Please lock it up and return it to the landlord. My friends were looking at me like, are you serious, Nina? I'm like, yeah, I'm actually pretty serious. So it was pretty crazy going to Atlanta, but I made it. It was a lot of fun. One of my best experiences ever, which is why I made plans to return to DC, and I got even more involved, and so I'll be going to Denver tomorrow.
What makes the experience so memorable, so special?
A lot of different things. I guess I didn't really finish explaining what UNAFSA is. So at the basic level, it's the umbrella organization for VSAs across the country, but it's so much more than that. They do a lot of philanthropy work. There's this project called CPP, which stands for Collective Philanthropy Project, and it's basically an organization that we pick every year as a group to donate our time and efforts to. And so I thought that was really cool, because when I went to UT, Greek life is really big there, and so fasts and sororities are like rampant. And some of the things that fasts and sororities do is the whole brotherhood and sisterhood thing, just really unity and bonding, as well as service. And so I never joined a sorority, but I really admire that about them. And so I wanted to be involved with UNAFSA because I knew it was like a large scale event. It was like a lot of unity, a lot of power, a lot of bonding and sisterhood and brotherhood, and I really wanted to donate myself to a service. And so I was really inspired by the fact that UNAFSA had CPP. So that was one thing that motivated me. Another thing that UNAFSA does is every year they hold a national leadership conference for Vietnamese youth. Well, it's targeted towards Vietnamese youth, but anyone is welcome to attend. And it's basically like a 3-day leadership training on different workshop topics, such as self-improvement as a leader, how to give back to your VSA, to something even larger scale, such as how to make a difference in Vietnam. And so I thought this was really cool. I wanted to expand myself as a leader and as someone who can make a difference in my community and in the world, and also wanted to meet people from all over the nation and just really network and get to expand my horizons. And so in Atlanta, I got to do just that. I met so many people. I think probably like somewhere from 50 to 100 people, all in the span of 3 days, which I thought was really amazing. The most that I ever met, as far as like 50 people at a time, was really never. And so what I also found really amazing was the fact that not only did I meet these people so quickly, but these people were so friendly and so inviting to the group. They weren't like, oh, you're Chinese, we're not going to associate with you. It was kind of like, hey, you're from a different region, you're from a different cultural background, but it's cool because we're all here for the same reason. And they just like welcome you with open arms. And so by the end of the 3 days, I was like chatting with these people that I just met as if I've known them for forever. And to this day, I'm still really good friends with them. So, that whole personal bond was really important to me. The workshops were really entertaining too, and I learned a lot about myself as a leader. I learned about CPP, and that year the CPP beneficiary was VAF, Vietnamese American Heritage Foundation, which is actually what I'm doing this interview for now. And I was really inspired by that project because what VAF intends to do is to collect 500 oral histories from the immigrants of Vietnam as far as their experiences in the Vietnam War and their journey over to America. And part of the reason why that touched home with me is because in 3rd grade, I was asked by our teacher to go interview our parents because your parents aren't going to be around forever. You need to document their histories, you need to document their life, because chances are you've never really sat down with your parents and asked them, what was your childhood like? What was it like growing up? And so that was an assignment. So I sat my dad down and asked him, what was your childhood like? What was your experience like? He told me so much that I never know. Things from as simple as there was a little creek next to the house where we used to live. I used to go pick berries with my friends. It's something that I never would have known, to, harder times. Like I was part of the Cultural Revolution in China. They put us all in the field to work, but I wanted to go to university. And so I would bring my reading books out into the field. And literally my dad and my mom would be picking wheat with a sickle and trying to read a mathematical textbook at the same time. So, hearing stories like that, it's made me a stronger person, because when you go back and you look at, oh, this person is no longer friends with me, doesn't want to be friends with me, it makes things like that seem so trivial when your parents have gone through so much. And after talking to my mom, she talked about how hard it was coming to the US because in China they have kind of a closed door policy where they generally don't really let people immigrate to other countries. And so she pulled a lot of strings. She went through a lot of different back doors trying to get us to America, but it was her hope and her dream to bring her family to America for a better life. And so she went through a lot. She had a lot of sleepless nights for a month on end. And once we came to America, life was really not any easier. And my dad was very opposed to us coming to America in the first place. And so there'd be a lot of arguments, a lot of tension in the family over the fact of why she came and why are we here. And my dad kept trying to get the family to go back to America, but she wanted to stay. And she just worked really hard at it, not only with the jobs on the physical level, but on the emotional level with having to tolerate my dad's arguments against why she was here. And her whole family, actually my whole entire family in general, really opposed my mom coming to the US. Every single person was against it because it was so difficult, it was going to cost a lot of money, it was going to be difficult finding a job, life was going to be really tough, but she just really stuck it out. So one of the things I admire the most about my mom is her resilience and her perseverance. And whenever I look at certain parts of my life, like studying a really difficult subject or trying to make it big in whatever career area, I think there's really not much that I can't do. I mean, look at my mom. Like, she has gone through pretty much hell and back for her family to have a better life in America. Like, she has sacrificed so much. So if she can do that, quite honestly, I can get through a physics problem, okay? Like, there's really nothing that I can't do. It's just, are you willing to do it? I don't know what I was talking about. I guess with my family, we just really stuck it out, and our life was definitely not easy at first, but I mean, we're doing well now. It's been a gradual step up. My mom has a really good job with the University of Texas at Permian Basin in Odessa. She's a professor there. She makes pretty decent money. And so I guess it's actually been a really enlightening experience because I feel like if you don't go through certain hardships in your life, it just makes going through those hardships so much more difficult in the future. If you've never had to stick it out, never had to live in an impoverished time period, then when you do hit that, then you don't know how to deal with it. And I feel like, quite honestly, I have a really, really nice life now, all thanks to my mom and to my dad, but especially to my mom. But if I ever were to go back to just eating, one meal a day, not having air conditioning, having to ride a bus for like hours on end to get anywhere, I could do it because she's instilled that in me. But yeah, with VAF and UNAFSA, I was really inspired by the project that I did with having my dad's oral history. So it was something that I wanted to expand with the Vietnamese culture. And so the fact that VAF was selected as CPP that year, I just felt like it was my responsibility kind of to get involved, especially now that I'm the Southern Regional Representative for UNAFSA. I just felt like it was my responsibility, especially because most of VAF is based in Austin, Texas, and that's my hometown. So really, with the convenience factor and the fact that it's so close to home and the fact that I'm so involved with UNAFSA, there's really no reason why I shouldn't do it, and that's why I'm involved with VAF today. And with UNAFSA, it's a mixture of the great friendships that I've built from UNAFSA. It's a mixture of learning about myself as a leader, as well as learning about Vietnamese culture, and about wanting to donate my time and efforts to a better cause, such as CBP.
So over recent years, you've learned a lot about Vietnamese culture and history and made a lot of Vietnamese friends and have been active in the community as far as causes and projects. But at the same time, you're very in tune with your background, being from China and listening to what your parents went through. And I'm guessing you see a lot of overlap between the two stories. What are some things you want to pass on to future generations that will be seeing this interview and other interviews? What do you want them to remember or know or understand about this time period or the overall immigration experience?
I think one really important thing that I would like youth to learn is to be resilient and to persevere. Because I feel like a lot of the youth, including myself today, are very spoiled in terms of what we're given. I guess a lot of families that immigrated over to the United States went through so much hardship to be here. And they just want a better life for their children. They don't want their children to have to go through that. But in a way, I feel like you're not doing them a service, you're actually doing them a disservice by doing that with your children, because your children, they have to go through hardships, whether it be now as a child, whether it be later. It's something that they just have to go through. My dad once gave me an analogy that a soccer ball rolls around freely on a field and it's easy to score, but when you begin, you should begin with these spikes on yourself, make it very difficult. And you're rolling through the field, you're gonna hit all these bumps and all these ridges, but every single bump that you hit, you're gonna overcome, and it's gonna break off one of your spikes. And so by the end of it, you'll be a smooth rolling ball. And I feel like going through hardships is maybe not something that will occur to you, but it's something that parents should not try to prevent their children from experiencing, because if you don't experience it now, chances are you probably will experience it later. And so I feel like it's really important for children to just really work hard in whatever they do, whether it be their career, whether it be their educational goals, because you probably have no idea how hard it was for your parents and for your ancestors to provide the kind of life that you have now. I mean, your parents did not get on a boat and, risk their life coming to America so you could sit at home all day on a couch playing Xbox. And a lot of the times I feel like these days forget about that. And so it's fine to have fun, it's fine to make friends, but at the same time, you need to really strive for a better self, so that way you can also better impact your community and better give back to what your parents have given back to you. Because by making your community better, you're making indirectly a better life for your parents. And I feel like that's just really important. So in tying in with that, I think it's really important for children and youth these days to really respect their elders, as well as to really reach out to their elders. From volunteering with VAF, I've learned so much. I've taken my life for far less granted, hearing these, atrocious stories of how people have struggled to come to the US, as well as witnessing my own parents' stories. And it's just a lot of life lessons. So for example, your parents are going to tell you should stay in school, you should get a good job, and things like that. But you think, oh, they're just my parents, of course they're going to tell me that. But whenever you hear an older person tell you, you should really stay in school, because trust me, I went through this and that, and life is not simple if you don't stay in school, and if you don't do well, then it really hits home, because they have no ulterior motives. So you just really got to try hard, really respect your elders, really reach out to elders in your community, because you learn so much. I feel these days that youth feel that older generations don't understand them, that we're too modern, we're too social, we're too urban, and all the older generations are just backwards, they're silly, they don't understand us. And it might be true to an extent, but don't think of it that way, because by doing that, you're just burning a bridge from a learning experience and from learning more about yourself and just really improving yourself. And I think it's also important to really preserve your heritage and your culture. These days, people who are Asian American, they just want to speak English because it's convenient. They just want to fit in with their peers, and I totally understand that, because I had such a hard time fitting in, and it was like one of my biggest dreams and goals to fit in and feel popular, because for so long I didn't have that. And I do think that it's important for you to fit in with your peers. Go and speak English, go have fun, go watch American movies. But at home, do try to speak your language. Do you try to preserve your culture? Do you try to read some history and cultural facts about where you came from and who you are? Because the bottom line is you're Vietnamese American or you're Chinese American, but you're not just American. You will always have that as part of your culture. That is your home. That is your motherland. By leaving your culture behind, you're basically not associating yourself with where you're from and who you are, and that's just a really sad thing to let go. So it's important to embrace American culture, but at the same time, it's really important to keep your own culture and identity intact.
I think you spoke wisely. I think most of us will agree with every word you said, which is why I want to end on this note. But if you have anything to add as far as any topics you want to go back over, or anything you want to say about yourself, your family, or your background, we'll be glad to hear it. Otherwise, thank you for your time.
I'm good. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope this has been educational for you.